Hello, everyone. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just waiting for all the attendees to start coming in. Welcome to this official side event of the Summit of the Future, titled Building a Future for All Ages, Intergenerational Solidarity for Inclusive, Just, and Sustainable Societies. My name is Kazuki Yamada from the WHO. I'll be the technical support of this event in the background, but I wanted to welcome everyone to this side event. And thank you so much for making the time for this. Just a few housekeeping notes. We shall be recording the webinar, so please keep posted for the recording to be sent to you. Everyone who has registered to this webinar shall receive a link to the recording. At the same time, we do have a Q&A function. So if you have any questions to ask of any of the panelists or indeed the people who are presenting and speaking at this event, please feel free to use the Q&A to ask your questions, and we shall get to you either during the event itself or through text message. So now I want to quickly pass over to Alana Officer from the World Health Organization, who will give us a brief welcome. Alana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kazuki. It's fantastic to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today's virtual event. As Kazuki said, building a future for all ages, intergenerational solidarity for inclusive, just, and sustainable societies. A very warm welcome to you all. So my name's Ilana, and I am the Unit Head for Demographic Change and Healthy Aging. And this event is hosted in support of the UN Decade of Healthy Aging and the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism. But I really want to thank and acknowledge our co-organisers, including the Permanent Mission of Portugal to the United Nations, the Philippines Permanent Mission to the United Nations, the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and HelpAge International. As we gather here today at this once-in-a-generation summit to shape what is our collective future, it is essential that we embrace a people-centered, rights-based life course approach, one that recognizes people of all ages. I believe we really share a common goal, one that is about building a future for people of all ages. And it's this vision that can unite us. And it's through this unity that real progress can actually be made. We really commend the PAC's emphasis on youth participation. Ageism has for far too long silenced the voices of youth and denied their meaningful engagement. But as the world's population ages, this narrow focus overlooks a critical reality. In only 6 years, by 2030, the number of persons 60 years and older will outnumber youth. And today's youth are tomorrow's older generations. Our futures are inextricably linked. The Pact, as it stands, does not give significant recognition to current or future generations of older persons. And this omission risks reinforcing ageism and deepening generational divide. Age should never be used to determine a person's worth, undermine their dignity, or their opportunity to contribute. We do recognise, however, that intergenerational tensions are very real, driven by concerns over economic security, resource allocation, disagreements over climate responsibility, and evolving societal norms. But together, these tensions can be transformed into opportunities. We have the power to bridge divides and to create a future that benefits all of us, a world for all ages. Today, we're going to focus on harnessing the power of intergenerational solidarity to build a more inclusive, a more just, and a more prosperous world, ensuring that both current and future generations thrive in a society that values and uplifts everyone. We're really fortunate to be joined by speakers and panelists of all ages who will share their experience and insights on building intergenerational solidarity to reduce discrimination, protect human rights, improve health and well-being, and indeed to address the pressing issues of our time. It gives me great pleasure to introduce by video His Honourable Mr. Enrico Manalo, Secretary of Foreign Affairs from the Philippines, to provide some opening remarks. Thank you, Kazuki, for showing the video.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Philippines is honored to co-sponsor this intergenerational dialogue. At the outset, I wish to thank the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, World Health Organization, Help Aid International, and the Mission of Portugal for organizing this important event. The Philippines has been a constant and staunch advocate of the rights and well-being of older persons. Our country has a relatively young population, with only about 7.5% in the ages 65 or older. However, our commitment to promoting the rights of older persons is unwavering. Our advocacy of inclusive and healthy aging has been consistent. The Philippines also champions the rights of children, because we firmly believe that nation building and the path to achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as the effective realization of the Pact for the Future, require intergenerational, multi-stakeholder, and whole-of-society approaches. As a co-sponsor of this intergenerational dialogue on building a future for all ages, the Philippines envisions a global society that protects and respects the rights, dignity, and well-being of people of all ages. We believe that in our quest to future-proof our world and to lay the foundations for future generations to thrive, the rights, needs, and perspectives of all age groups must be taken into account. No one should be left behind. Many of the challenges our global community faces today transcend national boundaries and demographics. International and intergenerational cooperation are essential to mitigate the adverse effects of these developments. While we may be 195 countries and have often been divided through social constructs and labels such as baby boomers, Gen X, and Gen Z, in many instances, we are called to act as one world to address our global needs. Intergenerational dialogue has never been more important than today. Global problems require global solutions. Each generation has, at its disposal, unique and valuable skills and insights to contribute to sustainable development and social transformation. Older people are informed by a wealth of experience. Younger people are energized by zeal and idealism. The young people of today will be the older persons of tomorrow. Using an intergenerational approach in the crafting of our policies and strategies facilitates their effective implementation and promotes inclusion and social cohesion. As such, intergenerational transfer of knowledge benefits all ages and our society as a whole. Studies predict that future populations will be much larger and older than today. The age structure will shift. National economies may no longer be able to rely on the demographic dividends of a younger society. The implications that this shift will have for sustainable development hinge on how well we plan for the aging of our world population. Technology will be crucial in addressing the challenges that the demographic shift creates. People, old and young alike, have a stake in harnessing the power of new technology such as artificial intelligence and social media. As such, people from all age groups should enjoy and benefit from access to these technologies, as well as the requisite education and skills to empower them to use these tools. Our whole of society approach must ensure that technology bridge existing digital divides. It is also important to ensure that technology is not used to exploit vulnerable segments of society, including older persons. And this is where the full, equal, and meaningful participation of older persons in the design of technology becomes indispensable. To future-proof technology, the insights and inputs of all generations are important. Technology has to adapt to the changing needs and capacities of young people as they age. At the same time, technology has to evolve in anticipation of the distinct requirement of future generations. In this regard, the Summit of the Future and the Pact for the Future are initiatives crucial to future-proofing our world. In this spirit of multilateralism, the Philippines is a willing and able partner in our global efforts to achieve sustainable development for all. The Philippines joins other countries as a bridge builder and a pathfinder, working to identify creative and durable solutions to our global challenges. As a peacemaker, the Philippines advocates dialogue and understanding between and among nations and generations. We commit to working together with all countries so that the inheritance we pass on future generations is one of peace, sustainable and inclusive progress, and solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much to His Honourable Enrico Manalo for championing the Philippines both, locally, nationally, and globally, intergenerational solidarity, and helping to build bridges and create a world for all ages. I have now the enormous pleasure of handing over the moderation to Valeria Kulunga. She's a committed activist and a global leader. She's recognised for her work with Girl Up and her significant contributions to youth policy. She was actually one of 8 Next Generation Fellows, which were appointed by the United Nations Foundation to help shape our common agenda. And she represented Mexico as a negotiator in the G20 Youth Summit. Valeria is deeply dedicated to fostering intergenerational solidarity and also researching future generations. It's with enormous pleasure I hand over to Valeria. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Alana, for that amazing introduction. I'm very excited to be your moderator today, and I look forward to the discussion we will be having. I want to briefly just explain some of the work that we have been leading through the Next Generation Fellows. In 2021, 8 Next Generation Fellows were appointed by the United Nations Foundation to prepare policy proposals for the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda. We came together to conduct online consultations with young people around the world to understand their vision for UN 2.0. This vision later became Our Future Agenda, which fed the Secretary General's Our Common Agenda. Since then, the new cohort of Next Generation Fellows and young people worldwide have worked endlessly to prepare for the Summit of the Future and the Pact of the Future. Young people understand that what is at play is our shared future, one that affects present generations, next generations, and future generations. We must be part of these conversations and act on the deliberations of the important events happening during the next days at the United Nations headquarters. The fight for intergenerational solidarity does not only seek to address intergenerational divides, but also increase the institutional representation of youth, implementing strategic foresight tools, and also informing decision-making with age-disaggregated evidence. Young people and older people must both be part of the conversation if we are truly going to harness the potential of intergenerational solidarity for change, and of course, to leave no one behind. With this, I am very happy to introduce us to our first section of the conversation, which is on setting the scene. We are going to share some perspectives from the UN on how we can and should understand and apply intergenerational solidarity. With that, I would like to introduce Julia Ferre she's the Social Affairs Officer from the Program on Aging section from UN DESA. Julia, hello, how are you? It's great to have you here.
Good morning.
I want to start a conversation with a quick question, which I'm very excited to know more about your thoughts on this. So people want to know, to get a better understanding of what intergenerational solidarity is, what do you think are the main findings of the UN Secretary General's report on intergenerational solidarity?
Thank you, Valeria, for that question. And first, let me join other organizers on behalf of the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs in welcoming all of you to this important event. So in answering to your question, I'm going to share some thoughts based on the findings of the report of my team to the United Nations General Assembly. This year, the report grounds discussions on intergenerational solidarity on population aging and older persons. It introduces some ideas of what it means to apply an intergenerational lens to different policy areas. You have the link on the chat, and I invite you all to read it for more details. I'm going to raise 3 points in my intervention very briefly. What is intergenerational solidarity? How can it help us prepare for a better future? And what are some of the challenges? Firstly, what is it? MIPA, short for the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, the only instrument we have at the global level on population aging and older persons agreed by governments, understands it both as a goal. Governments should aim to strengthen solidarity among generations, and as a tool that helps society work better, including by recognizing the contributions of older persons. The way I see intergenerational solidarity is as a lens through which to analyze, develop, and implement policies. So for instance, if we think of older women, which is a group that encounters distinct inequalities, we need on the one hand policies that address the fact that they face more economic insecurity, more disabilities, more violence than older men. But at the same time, an intergenerational lens allows us to better understand and to implement policies that address gender-based discrimination throughout the life course from birth to overcome and to avoid those inequalities in later life. Secondly, how does intergenerational solidarity help us build a better future? There are many ways, but here are 2 ways. One, it can help us build a future with more social cohesion. MIPA already in 2002 talked about avoiding generational segregation through intergenerational solidarity. And I think this idea is today more crucial than ever, as we see often a discourse that, as Alana mentioned, focuses on intergenerational tensions. A successful intergenerational approach can increase social cohesion between generations, not only by promoting and strengthening relationships between young and old, but also by highlighting how policies for any given age group affect people of all ages. Let's take, for instance, the example of pensions. An intergenerational lens would highlight how labor policies targeting younger people may increase or decrease their likelihood of receiving an adequate pension when they age themselves, but also how it is on everyone's interest, young and old, to have strong, adequate pension systems to ensure that current older persons have economic security, and also that employment gaps do not result in future poverty for today's young people. An intergenerational lens therefore counters age-based discrimination, as I believe my colleagues from OECHR and WHO will elaborate on. Another way it helps us build a better future, it can help develop better policies for the future that are based on good evidence. In drafting a report, I realized one of the key areas where we badly need to apply an intergenerational perspective is in the economic indicators and measurements that we use. Many of the indicators and measurements that currently inform our policies are outdated and biased. And because they are outdated and biased, they make it look as if older persons do not contribute to our societies, not because they don't, but because those contributions are simply not counted, including their economic participation, the hours of unpaid care work they perform, and all the other actual contributions of older persons to our countries. Thirdly, and finally, let me say a couple of words about some of the challenges. First and foremost, as Alana pointed out, is that older persons as a group are insufficiently addressed and recognized in policy discussions worldwide, including, but not limited to, the Pact for the Future. This is despite the fact that future generations will be older, both in more and less developed countries. So policies that do not reflect this demographic reality will simply not work. Another challenge is making sure we're able to build a narrative that does not center and does not aggravate this idea of generational tensions. Instead, as Alana said, promotes opportunity. A narrative that does not become another way of driving the discussion exclusively around the obligations of one generation to another. Rather, we need a narrative that promotes the idea that true intergenerational solidarity is about stronger, more cohesive, more just society that are, as Mipa says, for all ages. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Julia, thank you so much for this insights. And I am very interested in what you said on the economic indicators and having an intergenerational lens precisely on having policies that actually attend to the different generational groups. And for this, I would also like to introduce Chitraleka Massey, Chief of Section for the Rights of Older Persons from OHCHR. And Chitraleka, I am very interested in having your insights on something that I think will build up on the insights that Julia has just shared. I want to know, Chitraleka, how should we understand intergenerational solidarity in terms of its implications on the human rights approach? Which, I mean, we have already talked about economic indicators, preparing policy making with an intergenerational lens. What are the implications when it comes to human rights?
Thank you for that, Valeria. Let me just say greetings from OHCHR Geneva. And let's start with the fact that this is about all of us people, our lives. So my starting point will be Article 1, the UDHR. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And that article wonderfully ends in the fact that they should all act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Fast forward, a quick stop at another milestone, the SDGs, something that has had phenomenal traction throughout the world. What is it all about? It's all about partnerships for creating a better world for all of us. And what does that focus on? A life of dignity. The 2030 agenda now leads us to the Summit of the Future, where we as a global community, all of us, let's put off this one big community or one big society, unites to prepare for the future of both people and planet. Now, if we look from ancient times to modern day, but I will not go deep into that, we only have 5 minutes, spanning from the 10th of December, 1948 to today, what do we see around our world? We've made remarkable progress, medicine, science, space exploration. I mean, we saw this wonderful walk on television, everybody, and the digital age. Life expectancy, which used to be somewhere between the 30 to 40s, is now over 80 years today. Just last week, Japan celebrated having 36.25 million citizens over the age of 65. This is going to be our reality. By 2050, we expect more than 20% of the world's population will be over 65. Alana mentioned the fact that this is all about our collective future and our common goals. Well, it's also about facing our common challenges. Julia mentioned social security. We can throw into that equation issues of agency, legal capacity, care, and technology. As all of these gather momentum, we must integrate the fact into our policy-making scope that, yes, it's about the future generations and the future world, but the future world will have fewer younger people, as has been pointed out by previous speakers. And it will also include older persons. But the important thing to remember for all of us is that everybody can and will still contribute to this society, this wonderful world that we have. Intergenerational solidarity from a human rights lens is about ensuring no one is left behind. Julia mentioned and emphasized that our policies benefit everyone and must benefit everyone. So while we have issues like pensions and social security or the digital gap widens, to bridge these divides or what I like to think of as emerging fissures, we all need to focus on dignity. I think it is a key theme as we address equity, justice within the umbrella of intergenerational solidarity. Going back to a life of dignity and the human rights lens, what does human rights elaborate for us? And before I forget it, please do have a look at the treaty bodies and the special procedures and the various human reports that are there under the UN system. I know that Kazuki will put them on the chat. But let's look at what is the basics of our life for all of us. Let's not go into this idea of this is a legal sphere, this is a very complicated area, but just let's look at our life. What is important for us? Of course, the right to life, health, food, housing, quality education, equality before the law, meaningful participation and inclusion, as the ambassador pointed out, non-discrimination. equal opportunity, but importantly, also equal opportunity in outcomes. Our lives and our human rights are all interconnected, they're interdependent, and we need all of them to live a life of dignity. Now, let's look at the lens of the life course approach. And we say, for example, we know that girls, when they are young, have more discrimination to face. They are more likely to be forced to drop out of school. So that basic fundamental building block and that ability to enjoy a life of dignity already receives a very big reduction and a negativity point while they are very young. Their food may be or lesser in quality than the boys in their homes and families. So we see that as their life progresses for a young girl to being a woman, we see more disadvantage, and we see that as these fundamental building blocks of human rights have been impacting their lives negatively because they have not been able to enjoy these fundamental human rights, the older they get, we find that they are more marginalized, isolated, and at increasingly greater risk of violence, abuse, and neglect. To this, if you add in certain factors that can lead to discrimination, such as ethnicity, your location, a disability, your sexual identity, or the fact that you might be a minority religiously or otherwise, you see that this vulnerability increases significantly. So you see that all rights for everybody is important right from the moment of your birth, especially if you want to protect it at a time when you're much more vulnerable and likely to know. Because I just want to emphasize this point that aging is not a homogeneous process. It's diverse. And we need to ensure that, that still allows our policies and our support to ensure a dignity to all human beings everywhere without any discrimination. Ageism has been mentioned already. I'm sorry, did I finish my time already?
Yes, Chitraleka, yes.
Oh, sorry. Can I just take a
Definitely.
second and just finish with one point? I want to say that I won't go into ageism, but I do want you to hold on to one statistic that 1 in 6 older person in the world experiences violence, neglect, and abuse. I also want to just end with one little case which actually shows us how the older generation and the younger generation can play a very important part in intergenerational solidarity, and that is the example of climate change. I put on the table just 2 elements, maybe we can talk about them later. The Klima Senioren in Judgment, which was a pivotal moment in climate litigation, as well as the plea for ecocide to be included in the International Criminal Court text as the 5th crime, and the fact that there are over 130 cases which have been filed and look at both the younger people and the older people and bring them together in a very beautiful moment of intergenerational solidarity on preserving and acting together for an inclusive, just, and sustainable future. And now I'll hand over to Marlene. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's incredible, this information you're sharing. And for this, I also want to continue with the train of thought that you have left us with, Chitraleka, which is also talking about evidence and the information that we do know on intergenerational solidarity. And with that, I want to introduce Marlene Krasovitsky. She is the global campaign to combat ageism, part of the global campaign to combat ageism secretariat at WHO. Marlene, I'm very happy to have you here. I also have a question for you, and I want to continue the conversation where we left it off. And we want to know, what are the benefits of intergenerational solidarity, and how do we apply it in practice, according to the evidence that, of course, you have been working on from WHO?
Thank you so much, Valeria, and welcome to everybody. Our lens from the perspective of the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism is that intergenerational contact is one of 3 proven strategies that we know reduce ageism, alongside strong policies and education. Beyond reducing ageism, connecting generations also brings additional benefits, such as better health, better social connections, new skills, and heightened well-being. But now, today, I want to zero in on 6 key benefits about the power of connecting generations, which are directly relevant to the Summit of the Future and for which we have the evidence. Building intergenerational solidarity, 1, reduces ageism. Intergenerational contact helps break down stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination between age groups, fostering mutual respect, which is a key goal in creating inclusive societies. 2, it promotes mutual understanding. Interactions between younger and older people foster empathy, bridge generational divides, helping to create a more cohesive and just society. 3, improves health and well-being. Connecting generations benefits the physical, mental, and emotional health of younger and older people, reducing loneliness and enhancing social support systems. 4, builds inclusive and cohesive communities. Intergenerational initiatives create environments where people of all ages feel valued and can contribute, strengthening social ties and reducing polarisation. This aligns with the Summit's commitment to inclusivity and leaving no one behind. 5, enhances learning and innovation. When generations share their skills and knowledge, it sparks creativity and innovation, which can be leveraged to address complex global challenges like the digital divide and climate change. And 6, encourages shared responsibility. Connecting generations nurtures this sense of shared responsibility for addressing today's issues and building a better future, which is, of course, a core principle of the Summit of the Future. So how do we apply all of this in practice to realise these benefits? The WHO's publication called Connecting Generations has been developed to encourage and guide building intergenerational solidarity. It is a practical, step-by-step tool to developing intergenerational practice to reduce ageism and nurture meaningful relationships among people of different ages. Intergenerational work is powerful practice. However, not all intergenerational efforts are equal. So there are important principles and guides to planning, implementation, delivery, and evaluation to inform practice, to ensure we do no harm and to optimise the best possible outcomes. Connecting Generations also includes many case studies and 40 different activities to help inspire intergenerational practice. You can find the link to the guide and to the Global Report on Ageism in the chat. Please do take a look and join us to build a world for all ages. Building a future for all ages means ensuring that current and future generations age well and acknowledging that those not yet born will also age throughout their lives. Thank you. May I now pass on to Moira Allen. Moira is the co-founder and international coordinator of the Pass It On Network, who will give us an example of intergenerational practice. Moira.
I'm going to get my camera back. There we go. Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. I just find it so exciting to be here with you and to hear what all of you have to say, because it's exactly what our organization is trying to do. And we're an organization of older people, and we certainly don't have the means and the stretch of the United Nations, but we really do our best to get to this intergenerational question, which is of such vital importance. Ours is it's called the Pass It On. It's a grassroots network of positive aging advocates with pioneers across 60 different countries in the world. And we stand for the rights, equal rights for people of all ages, and also for the adjustment of society to the realities and the challenges of longevity. So I really feel very much at home with you. And I know time is short, so I'm going to jump right into an example that one of our members had in France earlier this year. we worked, was with them, worked for 18 months with the European Youth Forum to create a whole campaign across 15 different countries in Europe to promote voting in the elections. It was a very enriching organization and enriching experience, and we learned so much from it. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that we got from this experience is that you first have to build relationships. That we found to be the most important thing. You need to build relationships, build trust. And this is something that's very true across the lifespan and across every single situation that we find ourselves. We first build relationships, understand other people, learn to listen to them and to hear what they're saying, and then we can move on and build solid actions. The second point that I would just like to make is that many of our members are working in the field that Marlene was talking about, learning and innovation. These are basically organizations that are working with people from 45 years upwards and who are rejected by the market because they are too old. And these organizations are working with them in order to give them courage, skills and whatever to find new jobs. And I think it's very important to say that there is a swing that is taking place right now. And I can just quote an example, a very important example taking place in Germany, and I think it's happening all over the world, where older workers are being encouraged to go back into the marketplace because of the experience and the experience that they can bring to the marketplace. And these are all very, very important indicators of the future that we are going into. Our world is changing. We have to change our paradigm about aging. We have to look at a new way and a new optic for what the world is all about. And I think that a principal thing in that is to take the long-term approach. We're all the same people. If you ask me how old I probably feel like at the best age that I felt was when I was 35. I don't feel old, but we are all who we are and we remain who we are. And if we have a good environment in which to blossom, we continue blossoming, and then we maintain our health and we become part of the SDGs, and we can look after our own sustainability, which is good for us and definitely good for the whole society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maura. Very interesting. Thank you. Over to you now, Valeria, for our intergenerational roundtable.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we have had great insights on what intergenerational solidarity is, but I think we can go even further. And I would like to also understand what that means and how we should understand the Summit of the Future's call to leverage the power of intergenerational solidarity to build a better future together. So I'm very excited because we have brought together a wonderful group of experts in an intergenerational roundtable to unpack this and also provide concrete examples linked to many of the summit's key themes. For that, I would like to introduce Erika Dar. She's the main representative to the United Nations at the International Network for Prevention of Elder Abuse. Erika, I am very happy to have you here. I would like to start with saying that we have heard from Chitra and OHCHR on the human rights perspective on intergenerational solidarity. But I would love to know if you could provide us with examples of how that translates into the work that you have seen.
Thank you, Valeria, and to our colleagues at WHO and UNDESA for the invitation to participate in today's discussion. I kind of think that Moira set it up when she was talking about workforce. So I would like to address this topic of intergenerational solidarity from the lens of the right to work. So as we celebrate global longevity, the labor force data from OECD, with the support from AARP, show the ratio of older persons aged 65 and over to people of working age, which is 15 to 64, is expected to increase from 1 in 4 in 2018 to 2 in 5 in 2050. So given these demographic trends, we are seeing for the first time in history a multi-generational workforce with 5 generations currently in employment. But rather than focus on skills, ability, knowledge, aptitude, we see employment in public and private sector as focused on antiquated thinking, stigmatizing older persons purely on the basis of age. This is a violation of one's right to work and nothing short of ageism, as Alana and WHO have talked about. But what we see is that employers who embrace an age diverse and inclusive workforce, responding to the needs of employees across the life course, tend to have more success in attracting, motivating, and retaining workers. Yet we continue to see ageism, a term, by the way, which was coined by Dr. Robert Butler, which primarily focused on older persons. Ageism today, however, according to reports by WHO, and Alana has talked about this, don't necessarily just apply to older persons, but across the board. We have seen in the media, many of you might have read about Silicon Valley and in the tech field, how they expressly discriminate against workers over the age of 30 and seek employment of younger persons. So when we look at ageism, it's just older persons. They consider people below the age of 30 as old in their sector. During COVID-19, the pandemic, we saw women in their mid-careers and older women experience major disruptions in employment. AARP's research in the United States identified at least 40% of women experiencing job interruption. That is, nearly 3 in 10 had taken care of a child or a grandchild at home. You will probably remember the days of homeschooling. This impacted their work. What did they have to do? They had to resort to part-time work and giving up their full-time employment. More than 2 in 5 women were also caring for an adult family member or an older person. So you have that intergenerational, we talk about the sandwich generation that applies to women of caring for little children, but aging adults.
Erica,
now,
according to your request, please wrap up, please.
Okay, quick. So just to say there's a residual effect of that. Julia talked about pensions. As you know, if you leave the workforce, come back in, your pension is affected when you need it in older age. So in conclusion, as we prepare for this demographic change, I want to leave you with a stat. The workplace of today is going to be affected by the demographic change that is happening now and tomorrow, as today's youth are expected to spend almost more than half of their lives in older age compared to their years as youth. Keep that in mind. So when we're talking about Summit of the Future, these are complex issues, and I look forward to our panel discussion from our other speakers to really dive deeper into how we can work on policy to affect change. Thank you for the opportunity.
Erika, thank you so much. And I'm so interested in what you said on demographic change and the stats, because I myself, as someone who has researched future generations, believe that there is so much more we can do with these demographic changes and the information we have on them. And with that, I also want to introduce Rory Smith, who is the policy officer of Generations Working Together. And I'm really excited to have Rory here because Generations Working Together has been working very hard with partners to put intergenerational solidarity on the map through the Global Intergenerational Week. Rory, I'm really interested. What are the most important things you have learned from this work, including from the perspective of digital inclusion, which of course is one of the Summit of the Future's key themes?
Yeah, thank you, Valeria. And yeah, thank you again to the organizers for inviting me to sit in on the panel today. So yeah, Global Intergenerational Week is it's an annual campaign that's led by Generations Working Together, which is who I work for in Scotland. And it seeks to build awareness around the value and the importance of intergenerational practice and solidarity. So this year we had 15 countries involved from across the world. And across the week, we utilized digital platforms to host a range of talks, webinars, online engagement events, and intergenerational events to bring people together on this really important issue. And it's also an opportunity to share key facts, stories, and principles of best practice with a global audience. And I think establishing shared language around intergenerational practice and solidarity is really key. And so that's something we try to achieve, and it's something I'm going to chat a little bit more about. So for us at Generations Working Together, intergenerational practice isn't just a nice, wholesome thing to do. It's an essential part of our social world. And when it's done well, when it's done properly, it can be key to unlocking lots of benefits. And I know Marlene's gone through a lot of those benefits already. So that can be skills development, looking at digital skills, practical skills, educational skills. It can be using it to combat stereotypes, reduce social isolation and loneliness, etc. But in order to achieve and maximize these benefits, there are a number of key principles that I think need to be adhered to. And for the sake of time, I'm going to focus just on two of these right now. So firstly, quality. Good intergenerational practice requires careful planning to address the specific needs and potential conflicts between generations. So we can't expect to bring a group of different generations together and then hope for really positive outcomes. We need to plan it. And as Alana mentioned earlier, these generational tensions exist, and we risk exacerbating them without proper planning of intergenerational projects. So quality comes first, and I think using research to inform your projects, but also committing to training, spending some time training is crucial to achieving that quality. The second key principle I want to focus on is longevity. So meaningful relationships within intergenerational practice require ongoing interactions rather than just one-off or short-term events. And this is particularly important when it comes to discussing digital inclusion. So we've witnessed a number of amazing intergenerational projects that focus on digital inclusion, whereby younger generations support older generations with vital IT skills. And it's brilliant in so many ways because it's fairly cheap, it keeps costs down, you build meaningful relationships between generations, and then it also obviously reduces that digital divide. But it's crucial that these projects are planned long term. So firstly, because technology is always changing, and then secondly, because cognitive decline in older generations demands more regular IT updates and support. So IT skills can obviously be invaluable. Harnessing intergenerational learning to provide older generations with IT skills can obviously be invaluable, particularly in ensuring that older people aren't left behind in the digital age, but only if that support or those projects are continued ongoingly and have that longevity. So finally, to close out, I think recognizing intergenerational practices' societal value is crucial for our future. And through proper funding and ensuring quality of work, we can maximize its social return on investment and build cohesive, age-connected and digitally connected communities. Thank you.
Definitely. And I think that it's great that we're talking about digital connectiveness and technology. And I think we have just the right person to continue this conversation when it comes to intergenerational solidarity. I would like to introduce Alexandra Sidorenko, who is Senior Advisor at the European Center for Social Welfare Policy and Research. Alexander, I think you are the best person to talk to us about harnessing science and innovation to secure sustainable development for all, which we again know that is also one of the key themes of the summit. We would love to know, what role does intergenerational solidarity, inclusive of both older and young people alike, play in advancing scientific innovation for a better future?
Thank you, Valeria. And greetings to everyone who decided to make a webinar a part of the day. My thanks, of course, goes to organizers of our event today. They have been kind enough to allow me to choose the area of my brief intervention, and I have chosen science. The reason of my choice was twofold. Firstly, I have spent a significant part of my life, some 15 years, working in the research laboratory. So the field of science is, I dare to say, familiar to me. Secondly, because I believe that scientific research is a field in which people of different ages can be united by very strong bonds. I believe much stronger than age, race, or gender. There are two main bonds, I believe, that bring and keep researchers of different ages together: interest in the subject of their studies, which maintains the focus needed to make progress, and secondly, a sense of the scientific and practical importance of their common interests. I started my scientific career about 50 years ago in biblical time of the previous century. I had the good fortune to begin my scientific career in a very well-established laboratory headed by an internationally renowned scientist. It is with admiration and gratitude that I would like to mention his name today, Professor Alexander Friedenstein. I was in my early 20s, he was in his early 50s. At the time, that age sounded so distant, almost antiquated to me. But it was not his age that drew me to his laboratory, of course, but his name and the science of cell biology. Our laboratory had more than a dozen researchers and almost as many technical assistants. We were of different ages, but age never distinguished or divided us. My colleagues were distinguished by their dedication, their achievements, of course, and their willingness to work together towards a common shining goal. I believe that these qualities prevented the spread of ageism in our laboratory. Perhaps we were lucky, because ageism, the main threat to intergenerational cohesion, is most likely to be found elsewhere in the research field. But the idea that the power of collegiality and collaboration can be a powerful barrier to ageism is all the more reason to look for models of intergenerational solidarity in scientific research. I would like to end my speech with a slogan, if I may. I'm not a great admirer of slogans and mantras, but this one sums up what I wanted to say today. It combines this slogan, two previous slogans. One is more than 20 years old. It comes from the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. And the second is relatively new. It is very well known, thanks to the Sustainable Development Goals. So here is my slogan: towards a society for all ages, where no one is left behind. Thank you, Valeria. Back to you.
Thank you, Alexander. I want to say that, first of all, your remarks were really good, and we're really happy to have this different perspective, specifically when it comes to science, because again, it's also one of the key themes of the summit. And with that, I want to briefly just pause our panel, because we do have a special guest who is also at the center of the different activities that will be happening in New York City during the Summit of the Future, and hence has other commitments to attend before the end of this panel. It is a pleasure to introduce His Excellency Mr. Rui Vinhas, who is a permanent representative of Portugal to the United Nations. Please, Mr. Rui, please take the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon for those who are not in the US. Well, thank you, Valeria. Thank you very much for giving me the floor and to giving me the opportunity to participate in this event. It's for me a real pleasure. This is the first side event, or in these action days that prepare the Summit of the Future. It's the first in which I'm participating. tomorrow and Saturday there will be some more, but this is the first one, and it's important. It's being the first one because this is a topic to which Portugal attaches great importance. So I have a few remarks that if you allow me, I will go through it. Thank you to the organizers, to the organization, HelpAge International, the Philippines, UNDESA, and WHO. We are indeed, intergenerational dialogue and solidarity has been one of the areas that Portugal has been strengthening here at the United Nations, and because it's a dialogue and a topic that allows us to engage both older and younger generations in the pursuit of sustainable development goals, and key to a successful realization of the 2030 agenda. We have been at the forefront of advocating for inclusive and sustainable development practices, and in recent years it has been particularly distinguished itself by recognizing the invaluable contributions from of all ages can make towards the older generations, but also harnesses the energy and innovation of the youth. In my country, we see and consider older persons as a very valuable part of our society, possessing a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and experience that enriches our communities. It is imperative that we recognize and honor older persons' contributions by ensuring their full inclusion in all aspects of public life. The importance of intergenerational dialogue cannot be overstated. It is through conversations and exchanges across age groups that we cultivate understanding, empathy, and a shared commitment to building a better future for all. At the heart of Portugal efforts lies a profound belief in the power of collaboration and collective action, by bridging generational divides and encouraging meaningful participation in SDG initiatives. We not only enriches its own society on doing this, but also sets a compelling example for global cooperation. The report of the SG on the follow-up to the International Year of the Older Person, Second World Assembly on Aging this year, devoted to intergenerational partnerships and solidarity, it encourages member states, among other issues, to recognize the role of intergenerational relations in promoting social cohesion and influencing an individual's life course through the transfer of experiences, knowledge, resources, and support, and also to promote intergenerational knowledge transfer in the workplace to harness the potential of different generations and better adapt to changes in labor markets. Our aim in our daily work is to ensure that all people, including young and older persons, recognize themselves as owners, drivers, and beneficiaries of the SDGs. Allow me to highlight one aspect related to the implementation of the SDGs through concrete actions. In 2022, in the framework of the Commission for Social Development, we have co-organized an event on intergenerational dialogue and participation as a tool for create full and productive employment and decent work for all, overcome inequalities, and achieve SDGs by the 2030 as a target. It was one of the first events at the UN that brought together older and young persons seeking to build mutually empowering relationships between generations as one of the most important factors in achieving the objectives of the 2030 agenda. To conclude, Madam Moderator, a few words on the Pact of the Future and the Summit of the Future that we expect initiated and not yet closed. The pact includes references to the establishment of intergenerational dialogues, and its annexed declaration on future generations underscores intergenerational solidarity as an indispensable part of the foundation for prosperity of future generations. Let's make sure that all our voices, member states, and all stakeholders during the summit highlight the importance of intergenerational solidarity so that all areas covered by the pact can be realized and implemented through the full contribution of older and young persons in order to ensure that no one is left behind. I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinas, for this incredible intervention and insights on what's happening at the Summit of the Future and will be happening during the next few days. And with that, I think that we can benefit from these insights on the continuing discussion that we will continue in this online event. Thank you, Mr. Vinas. And with that, I would love to introduce Annie Wright, who is the Global Inclusion Advisor at Help Age International. Annie, we have heard Mr. Vinas on two very important topics. One is partnerships, and another one is on intergenerational knowledge. And I know that Help Age International has been a leader in the work to show how bringing generations together can create change, especially for low and middle income countries. So I'm really interested in understanding, how can genuine intergenerational solidarity help us advocate for climate action, which of course is another one of the main themes of the Summit of the Future. Annie, please share with us your insights.
Sure. Thank you so much, Valeria. And thanks everyone for having me here today. And hello to everyone who's joined us today. So in order to answer the question, I'm going to give a bit of background. Help Age really started to explore intergenerational approaches to programming and advocacy in a consolidated way in 2022 with the publication of Bringing Generations Together for Change. And this is a practical guide to intergenerational work in the field in low and middle income countries. The guide includes 10 case studies, which cover a variety of technical areas and topics, and I believe you'll be able to find the link in the chat. Since the publication of the guide, Help Age and our partners have run 3 pilot projects in Uganda, Nepal, and Vietnam that look at the intersection between intergenerational approaches and climate change, both in rural and in urban settings. All of our pilots, including several sets of intergenerational dialogues, which we heard a lot about today, and these often involved the participation of government officials or decision makers, and they discussed real localized climate change challenges and measures for mitigation and adaptation. So to answer the question, from this, we've seen that intergenerational solidarity can support advocacy efforts in several ways, but I'll go over 3 of them today just for brevity's sake. So the first is the idea of strength in numbers. Of course, it's an oldie but a goodie, but specifically here we're talking about diverse numbers. Through research for Help Age's guide and pilots, we saw that decision makers tend to pay attention to what older and younger people have to say when their voices are unified. This is significant because both groups report previous difficulty in being heard by those in power when they act as standalone units. Secondly, we've also seen the importance of older people being supported to raise their voices. Younger people in our projects have reported realizing that older people, especially those living in rural or indigenous areas, have important traditional knowledge and methods for building resilience that can really help with climate adaptation. So policymakers need to create places where this knowledge from different generations can be shared and used to help guide long-term climate action. The third pathway is through localization. So it's similar to the second point. However, this becomes particularly important in the context of low and middle income countries as we move towards a more locally led approach. Local methods of mitigation and adaptation, fostered and shared between generations, can maintain traditions, provide a sense of ownership among communities, promote increased cultural knowledge and appreciation, and they also appeal to the budgets of local governments, which often have insufficient funds to fight against climate change. That's all I'll say for now. I'll leave my time, hopefully on time, but please check out the links that are in the chat for more information about some of the work that Help Age is doing. Thanks, Valeria.
Thank you, Annie, for your insights. And also, I want to let everyone know that due to time's sake, we will unfortunately not be able to do a Q&A, but we will be able to conclude with a roundtable discussion with all of our guests. So with that, we do have more or less 5 minutes left. So I will ask our roundtable participants to please join me on the screen. And I have a question for you all, because we have been talking, and I've been taking notes on this. We have been talking on using an intergenerational lens when it comes to this topic, creating partnerships, understanding that we not only have common goals, but also common challenges, understanding that science and innovation should be at the forefront of the conversation, as well as important issues that we are all facing in our shared future, including climate change. So with that, I think it's important for us to end this discussion, understanding also what we need to do next. So please, I'm gonna invite you to answer my last question, and feel free to briefly, within a minute or so, just explain what you think governments and other stakeholders can concretely do to include people of all generations in building a better future. Because of course, what we want to see after the Summit of the Future are action-based strategies. Erica, I see you.
Yeah, Valeria, I want to go back to what Alana Officer said at the beginning about unity. I really think that we are being set up, this conflict of intergenerational, older versus younger. That is not how life works. We are all aging. And as Alana said, the youth of today are the older persons of tomorrow. So we should all be vested in policy decisions that affect our life course. And we have seen from a rights perspective, when it comes to women, if we look at the United States, our rights are jeopardized. What women did, and we owe them a debt of gratitude in the 50s and 60s to get women to the table, we're seeing globally women being suppressed. So let's not have these artificial barriers. It's not about the other. Age is not static, it's dynamic. So if we start from a good place, we can have healthy conversations that affect policy in all sectors, whether in SDGs, whether in, and we talk about, human rights. So I leave it there because we have more I want to hear from others, but that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Alexander, I see you.
Thank you, Valeria. We're talking about, if I may interpret your question, we're talking about future policies. If you're addressing the governments who are gathering at the summit, so the message could be, at least that's something which I would certainly support, is to move from declarations to action. In particular, two areas, and the first one is to base the policies not on the age, but on the promoting the lifelong individual development. That's about, of course, life course approach. It's declared, it's proclaimed everywhere, but hardly followed in concrete policy measures. The first thing. And the second one, to promote the positive yet realistic image of every people, of all ages, of every generation. And that's to open the perspective of a lifelong individual development and longevity for all. Thank you, Valeria.
Thank you. Ruri and Annie, we have 2 minutes left, one for each. So please do help us with some insights on what you think are actions that our decision makers can make.
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly. So in Scotland, where Generations Working Together, my organisation is based, our government funds the development of intergenerational practice, and they fund us at Generations Working Together, and then we act as a sort of centre of excellence and a members organisation for intergenerational practitioners and stakeholders across the country. And that's because they recognise how valuable intergenerational practice can be. for all the reasons that have already been stated. And thankfully, they're very receptive to the work and the research that we quite regularly present to them. But I don't think that is the case in all countries. So I would say the first really actionable thing that a government can do is just fund intergenerational practice. And then if you fund projects or capacity building organizations that are working to bring different generations together, then you start to build that cohesion, that solidarity, and then hopefully things can progress from there. But I won't go on to any longer. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty summed it up, so I won't repeat what everyone said, but I agree. We obviously need more funding. We need more intergenerational policies. We need governance to recognize the role of both older people and younger people in achieving SDGs. Obviously, at Help Age, we believe older people are very valuable, very important to achieving SDGs, especially those that have to do with health, poverty, and building healthy cities. So we need to see global and national policies take an intergenerational approach to address how aging and other areas are connected.
Thank you. And I think everyone has hit it right on the spot. We need more action-based proposals. We need more financing. We need to hear more from the people. We need to be able to include different generations, different people from different backgrounds. And I think that's precisely the value of this event that we have been very happy able to host, which is getting to hear what experts have to say, but also get to hear from the webinar chat and from the people what they think should be happening at the Summit of the Future. And with that, I want to thank all the speakers, all of our guests, all of our panelists. I want to thank the audience as well for being here faithfully. And for many people, early time, for others, late at night. And we appreciate that you take the time to be here, because what's happening during the next few days at the UN, but also worldwide, is historical. It's important. And we want to invite you to continue researching on the topic and working on the important work that you do, audience, because I'm sure many of you are also action makers. We have been sending multiple resources on the chat. And some of these resources include LinkedIn pages or websites that will allow you to get the information of some of the panelists and guests. So we do invite you to reach out if that's of your interest. And also we invite you to just continue helping us spread the word of the important message that we have been discussing here. And with that, I want to give the microphone back to Kazuki, and I want to thank everyone for the invitation of the event, but also for the important insights that you have shared today.
Thank you so much, Valeria, for all of your excellent moderation. And to all of the speakers and the panelists, I'll keep it brief. Once again, thank you to the panelists, to the co-organizers, UNDESA, Help Age International, the governments of Portugal and the Philippines, and also all the organizations that were represented here today. Thank you for your time. Please don't hesitate to join the global campaign to combat ageism, to join us in creating a world for all ages. Get involved with the UN Decade of Healthy Aging, learn more about the UN Program on Aging, and explore Help Age International's work, whose links I've posted in the chat. And let's keep a keen eye on what happens at the Summit of the Future, because we're really building a better future for all of us together. And now is not the time for division, I think. So thanks again for everyone, and let's go and get some work done.